Hey everybody, I'm Alex McClellan.
And I'm Mason McClellan.
And we're the Backtrack Brothers. We go back and watch classic movies and see how they hold up now.
We're going to talk about personal history with the movie, and then we're going to go into visuals, acting, and soundtrack. Then we're going to go into the spoiler zone.
Spoiler zone.
Go over the visuals, odds and ends, and overall our holdupability of the movie.
Yep, you nailed it. This week, we are going over The Other Guys, the comedy movie directed by Adam McKay that came out in 2010. So, Mason, why don't we get started? You can tell us about your personal history, if you have any, with The Other Guys.
So this is the first movie where I don't have any personal history. Zero. I had no idea what this movie was until Alex was like, hey, let's watch this movie.
You never heard of it?
Never heard of it, nothing.
It proves my point about why we're watching this movie in the first place. Alright, so my personal history is I absolutely adore this movie. This movie came out in early August of 2010, so I was in college on summer break, and me and my close friends probably got loaded one night, went to the movie theater and watched this, and oh my gosh, I remember barely being able to breathe while watching the opening chase scene.
Yeah.
And just losing it. Because they didn't even advertise those people were in the movie.
Yeah,
we'll get into that later, but it was nuts. So I absolutely love this movie. The reason we're doing this movie is A, it was my birthday last weekend, so
Happy birthday, Alex.
thanks, man. Yeah, it took me that long to pick up on that cue. And then also, I think this is a completely underrated Will Ferrell gem. Everyone thinks of Anchorman and Old School and Step Brothers, but you know what? He has other great movies too, and this is one of them. So really excited to talk about it today. All right, Mason, here we go. So we're gonna fly on into the visual section. So visually speaking with this movie, Mason, how did you feel this movie held up?
So I mean, on a visual standpoint, it's not like an Avatar or like a Star Wars where visuals matter a lot. It's an action comedy. So, I thought overall it looked modern enough to be, to hold up with modern movies. The stunts and stuff like that looked believable and well done.
Yeah.
And I thought overall, just with the action scenes, I thought they're very, very well shot and coordinated. I thought they all looked good and were one of the more exciting parts of the movie.
I agree. I think the visual action in this movie, whether it's the opening chase scene and you see the car with the bus and the whole shootout, that whole thing is great. The visual effects, seeing people falling very fast, I thought that looked really good for what it was.
Yeah.
It's one of those things action comedies don't necessarily have to look good, to your point, but it's nice when they do, right? I think you could tell there was a pretty good budget behind this movie. I don't know if you noticed, there were plenty of corporate sponsors and logos all over the friggin' place in this movie. So I think that might have been one of the places where they were able to get a little extra money to make the movie look good. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the action sequences look good. Things could have looked better, but I mean, for a movie that is 10 plus years old, I think it looks like a kid that came out last year and no one would have batted an eye.
Yeah, and I think that for action comedies, right, you don't usually the comedy comes first and then action comes second. But I feel like for here they're both kind of split.
Yeah.
I like the action in this movie surprisingly compared to other.
It's one of my favorite aspects of this movie, and it's part of what I think is so underappreciated about it is that it really can fit both audiences. We'll get more into the writing and how that breaks down in the script and kind of how the pacing goes throughout the movie, but just talking about the visuals, I think I was very impressed with that, and I'm glad it still holds up today.
Yes.
Here we go, Mason. You got your goggles? Put them on, because we are we're diving into the audio and score section of this video. What?
You're like a dad when he's trying to be hip and cool. How about we dive into this the soundtrack or whatever.
There's no other YouTubers that have a gimmick. I'm the only one. So we've dove in. We've dove in. We're gonna talk about audio and score now. Mason, what did you think about the audio, soundtrack, those aspects of this film?
I mean, it's an action movie. I mean, it's one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. It's remarkable. Titanic? No, not Titanic.
Yeah.
Top Gun. Actually, it's better than Top Gun.
It's definitely better than Top Gun. That's what I mean. Is it better than Top Gun? Let's start a discussion there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not. I mean, it's an action movie. It's there. It fits. It's not a highlight.
Yeah.
But it's not really a low light either. So.
I think so. One, I think there's some great comedic music, like the Little River Band, that being a running gag throughout the whole thing, as like all these tense scenes. Will Ferrell keeps putting on these like light tracks, like soft rock. I always love that. But then there are some actual good needle drops, like when the opening scene when somebody takes a big leap. Do you know this song that was played?
No,
Hero by Foo Fighters. There goes my hero. It's supposed to be like a superhero flying, but
they didn't fly.
It's very ironic. It's very good, right? And then not even an ironic one, but when Icky Thump kicks in the boardroom shootout scene, oh man, that bumps. So I think there are a few moments of this movie where the soundtrack does nail. Also, Pimps Don't Cry. That I don't think you know that was even a song. That's a real song.
That's a song.
That's a real song. So when they're singing that to each other, that's real. And it's in the credits at the end. In the end credits, Pimps Don't Cry is a song playing in the background. So if you can pick up on those little audio cues, there's some really good fun little nuggets in there.
Yeah.
So I'll toss that out there. Overall, though, 100% agree with you. This isn't a spectacular score. It's very standard cop drama, like the saxophone playing as they're in the dark, sitting by the river, all depressed. It's very standard cop drama affair.
Yeah.
And really, in the comedic scenes, I think it was mostly silence. They kind of just let the performers do their thing. They didn't feel the need to bring in comedic sounds or music. They just let Will Ferrell and the other people just kind of go wild. All right, Mace, we're ripping, roaring through here. Next up, we're going and talking about actors. Let's start off with our lead performer, one of them at least, Will Ferrell, who plays Detective Alan Gamble. What did you think of Will Ferrell's performance?
I thought Will Ferrell, he demonstrated the character's little wimp side well, and then he also demonstrated his screaming rage, bad cop side.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought, and this is really a movie starring him, and you can see his comedic performance and everything shine in this movie.
Oh, 100%. And we'll get into the co-star.
Here is our co-star.
Hi, Keaton. All right, we're recording now. This isn't a great interrupting time. All right, are you gonna be quiet? We made it through 2 or 3 videos with that kitty alert. That was pretty good.
I don't know.
But needless to say, she feels the need to be a part of this. So as I was saying before my cat rudely interrupted us, I think we'll talk more about it when we talk about Terry Hoitz, but Will Ferrell is obviously the comedic genius, and he just feeds off the straight man energy of Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
And I think it's really an effective odd couple pairing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think Will Ferrell, like you said, was super great at portraying both of those sides. And I love that they built that into his character and they kind of slowly unfolded over the course of the film, because I think those are Will Ferrell's 2 best extremes, when he's extremely nice and sweet and quirky like Elf, or when he's extreme over the top screaming at everybody. I feel like those are the 2 best extreme Will Ferrells, and they fit both of them in this movie. And so it's great. You don't have to choose one. You get the best. You get the best of both of them. It's awesome. Next up, let's talk about Mr. Mark Wahlberg. Of the Wahlburgers. You don't even know about that, do you?
I have no clue.
Mark Wahlberg has brothers that are also semi-famous, and they started a burger chain called Wahlburgers.
Didn't do well.
No, it's still up and running. It's up in Boston. They're all from the New England area, so they're up there. Yeah, no, it's still going.
That's cool.
That's cool. I think that's accurate. I know that was a thing, and they had their own reality show.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Anyway, and Mark was on it the least. It was all his brothers, Donnie Wahlberg. And
yeah.
So Mark Wahlberg, what did you think of his performance?
I thought he fed off of Will Ferrell very well. I thought they were a great little duo, and I think that Will Ferrell's screaming bits fit well with Mark Wahlberg's screaming bits. So.
It sounds kind of their bits fit well together. But yes.
They had good bits.
They have good cohesive bits.
Yes.
I like to think that we have cohesive bits, Mason.
Yeah, I don't like that sound.
Let's talk about our bits later. So, but I 100% agree with you. I think he's a great he has those comedic chops, right? Like you see it in the ballet scene. I think he's hilarious in the ballet scene.
That's so weird. That whole thing was weird. We'll explain that later. That whole thing was
If you were still with me, you wouldn't be in here dancing for dollar bills. Like, this is the one thing you gotta give him credit. He is committed to this performance.
Yeah.
And I will say this. I've seen Mark Wahlberg in a good amount of movies. He does not always commit to his part like this. For example, go watch Instant Family and tell me that he gives a flying fuck about anything in that film. Oh my God. Mark is giving no energy. He literally is just mumbling through the whole movie. He's supposed to be like a caring, loving dad. It doesn't work at all. But in this movie, he's literally throwing computers on the ground and screaming. He's so committed. I love it.
Yeah.
It's just, you love that.
He knew a movie was in.
Yes, exactly. You can see that Adam McKay pulled that comedic side out of him. Whereas I think, like, to your point, other directors might have just like, all right, Mark, just do your thing. And then he just mumbles like a jackass. Our third contestant for acting appraisal is going to be Captain Gene, who is played by my boy Michael Keaton. I love Michael Keaton.
I think I can definitely see his potential in this movie for other movies.
Oh my
God. I don't think he really went to his like full potential in this movie.
No.
But I think I can see how he can be really funny.
Oh, he's great. I think he does everything. He was the Batman in like the 1990 Batman.
Oh,
yeah,
like
that's
the bad one that you showed me.
No, not the bad ones, not Val Kilmer ones. No, not that one. The actual good one with Jack Nicholson as the Joker.
Oh,
yeah, that one. So where Jack Nicholson, he's Batman in that one, and he's in Batman Forever, which is the one with the Penguin and Catwoman. Which you haven't seen either of those. They're the Tim Burton ones. Those are both good. So. But yeah, so he's done like starring action roles. He's done cop movies. He's been in Tarantino films. He's in Jackie Brown. And yeah, so I love him and everything. He also stars in this movie called Birdman, which is definitely more like a deep actor psyche movie, which is definitely not for everybody, but I really like it.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, I think he is hilarious in this movie. And to your point, he doesn't get a ton of screen time, but I almost feel like it makes the time he is on screen that much better.
Yeah.
He gives off that perfect standard angry cop lieutenant captain energy. You know what I mean? I want to do one really quick, just honorable mention of Eva Mendes as Shelia Gamble, as Will Ferrell's wife.
Yeah.
She doesn't get enough love in this movie. She's in what, 3-4 scenes? And I think she's incredible in every single one.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I think she was like, she was obviously written to be this hot, but like, like eye candy.
Yeah, to a degree.
I don't see really what, like you're saying, she doesn't get enough love.
Oh,
I think she was just there. I don't know, as eye candy.
So I'm guessing the 15-year-old's too busy staring at her tits and not listening to the words coming out of her mouth because she was hilarious. And
I see any of the paintings in The Shining.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know where you're looking at. Do you watch the screen when you watch movies?
Yeah.
Okay. So every scene she was in, I thought she was hilarious. That was strictly from the dialogue coming out of her mouth. And like when she's saying goodbye to Terry as she's leaving, and she's talking about, all I ask is every day that he goes and is safe. And then, I take out my breasts and I show them, they're not the biggest he's ever seen, but they're perky and they're yours. That whole thing, she's so committed. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Do you not remember that, or do you just not agree it's funny?
I don't agree it's funny.
Okay, well that's your problem. That's a personal problem.
It's honestly, I think it really shows. It was funnier when you said it.
Do you think?
It was funnier when you said it compared to when she said it.
Oh man, alright, so Mace is gonna die on the Women Aren't Funny hill. So, Mason, go ahead and expand.
I'm not saying
I think, yes, there are funny written jokes, but I think she delivers them well.
Okay.
But I guess you don't agree, and that's fine.
I don't. Women aren't funny. Cut that out.
Alright, everybody, here we go. Mason got his water bottle.
That's cool.
Cool as shit. So we're here. We're officially in the spoiler zone. And that means anything goes. Nothing's off limits. We're going to talk about the writing. We're going to talk about the plot. We'll talk about the conclusion. We're going to talk about everything. So if you have not seen this movie, GTFO, watch it, come back to us, and enjoy the rest of this YouTube video.
Please.
And thank you. All right, so Mason's gonna start us off in the plot and writing section, and let us know what you think. What's the first thing you want to talk about?
So, this is a comedy, so a lot of my pros and gripes are gonna be with how funny I think the movie is. And again,
Gotcha.
Comedy's personal, whatever. So I thought, first off, the opening scene was super funny and unexpected.
Totally unexpected.
With The Rock and Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
I wish the movie was just with them.
That was one thing I thought. If they made a full-length movie of that, would anybody not watch it? That might be the biggest movie in America. If they came out with that tomorrow, I think it would be the biggest movie in America.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? I'm gonna be honest. I didn't realize how many movies I watched with Samuel L. Jackson in them until I started sending Mason movies to watch. And as I'm watching them, I'm like, Samuel L. Jackson, Samuel L. Jackson, Samuel L. Jackson. He's a prolific actor. I don't care what anyone says. He's fucking everywhere, and he's in every good movie. Do you agree with me? Are you starting to notice this? At a certain point, it's undeniable.
Like, oh, there he is. It's like where's Waldo? You just have to watch Samuel L. Jackson in the scene.
Death, taxes, Samuel L. Jackson's in the movie. Oh yeah, I 100% agree. Opening bit is incredible.
The whole aim for the bushes thing.
Aim for the bushes. How funny is that line? Like, as if that would do anything. Like, you landing on some twigs and leaves are gonna break a 15-story fall.
Like running on water in a video game where it doesn't kill you if you're running on a little puddle.
Aim for the bushes. Yeah, it's like you just jump. As long as you roll when you land, you never get hurt. It's the same dynamic. That's what they should have done instead of just belly flopping into the pavement. That wasn't a good move.
Well, they clearly didn't hit the bushes.
No, well, there are no bushes. No bushes. It's all pavement. What the hell are the bushes there for? That was one of the funniest moments in the movie theater. It was silence when that happened. Like, everyone's watching as they're falling closer and closer. Like, what's gonna happen? There's nothing that can happen other than poof. Yeah, and then the funeral happened, and that's when everyone started laughing because we were all in such disbelief. They just killed Samuel L. Jackson in The Rock in the first 5 minutes of this movie. Holy shit. We didn't expect them to be in, and now they're dead. It was wild, man. That was a wild theater experience.
I think the fact that Alan, attracts all these hot women, and it just comes in naturally, and Mark Wahlberg's like, what? Yeah, he didn't even have it. He's not even acknowledging it. I think that's kind of funny. It shows the difference between characters right away.
Oh, 100%. Right, exactly. Mark Wahlberg wants to be a star and would love to get that type of attention, and Will Ferrell could give a shit about it. So it's perfect, yes. Agreed.
So I mentioned this before. I didn't like how the wife was kind of treating Will like a baby. Especially for how long some of the scenes, pimps don't cry thing. That was so long. I feel like it would have been funny if it was a little bit shorter or just a quick thing. But it was 3 minutes long.
I think it was, I think it's one of those things. So we'll talk about this later, but I'll dip into it now. Definitely the third act of this movie slows down a lot, and the jokes definitely slow down a lot. It's a little tough. That scene, I think, is one of the tougher ones, but I think there's enough jokes. I think the Pimps Don't Cry is probably the least effective joke, and it's the least effective for you. You didn't even know it was a song, so you didn't get the reference at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But yeah, I think the part where she starts screaming at him, I think is hilarious, because she goes from 0 to 10 just instantly, just to start screaming at him, and then just the background story about they met and talking about him at his low and as a pimp and all this pimp shit is hilarious.
Yeah.
Get him, play that shit. Also walking around money, some shoes. This shit is. I have no idea where he pulled that decision to put this in this movie, but I love that he did that. It's a crazy choice. Just all of a sudden, I'm gonna have a background as a pimp, and that's where Dark Side's gonna come from. That's crazy. And he inadvertently was a pimp. He didn't even want to be a pimp. He was like, I'm gonna help out some of my girlfriends, and then now he's got a grill and a switchblade. It's fucking nuts. But you weren't a big Eva Mendes fan, huh?
Nah.
Yeah, interesting.
It's not because she's a woman.
Yeah. It's not a race thing, right? All right, just want to make sure. So.
Wait for you, though.
Maybe if it was a white lady, it would have been funny.
That's a white man.
I was instantly turned off when I saw he was married to one of the mixed individuals. Why isn't the white man married to the white woman? I couldn't even.
Why isn't the white man married to the white man?
What? Are you advocating? I don't think the guy I'm talking about would advocate for men to be fucking dudes. I think that guy also does not approve of that.
It would be funnier
It would be funnier if Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg were a couple.
I think so.
But then you can't have the standard cop drama where they're upset with their wives. Like their wives.
Yeah, but was I even good at the first place?
No, but it's part of the standard cop drama. This is with you not having any cop comedy drama history hurts you. Because that is standard.
Yeah.
You really got to realize this movie is just from a long line of these comedic cop action line, right? So in the 80s, you had Beverly Hills Cop, you had Lethal Weapon, and then there's just been tons and tons of different variations of that same movie formula forever. It's a cop pairing, they don't like each other because they're different because of X, Y, Z, but they have to overcome their differences and work together to take down the criminal, and in the end, they realize they actually love each other and want to butt fuck. That's the whole movie. Maybe not the end part.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, I think that's just him fantasizing.
You're gonna watch. Trust me, as I force you to go back and watch all these 80s and 90s movies, you're like, oh my god, they all have this. This is, like I said, this is just another iteration of a formula that was created in the 80s. This hasn't stopped. It's just a modern version of that. And that, like, the whole idea of, when he goes to the water and he sees Mark Wahlberg, he's like, oh, how often do you come down here? He's like, oh, nights when I have trouble with my woman, so every night. Like, that is the most played out cop drama line ever.
Yeah. As an edgy teenager, I thought that the suicide negotiation scene was one of my favorites.
That's really funny. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know. I just thought that Will Ferrell doing absolutely nothing and embarrassing himself.
Big soda pop.
Embarrassing himself along with everyone around him. It's probably listening to this guy. This guy's about to jump.
Yeah.
And it's just this guy's has a microphone and it's just.
He's trying to help.
He's trying.
Big soda pop. Better than when Mark takes it over. He's like, no one cares about you. You're a piece of shit. Well, Will Ferrell doesn't help. It's out there. Everyone thinks you can do it.
Yeah, what do you mean?
That's the part where I think you're probably the biggest gripe. No, that's funny because I actually thought that was probably one of the lesser effective
Really?
scenes.
I thought that was hilarious.
I think this is part of what you're talking about, Mr. Edgy Teenager versus I'm a 31-year-old man now and I feel mature and I have to... Suicide is serious. No, I don't really think that. I just think there's other things that are funnier now. I think it's just one of those things,
So, besides the humor, I think overall with just the writing and the conflict between the characters is all kind of flat.
Okay.
It's oh, this guy's always mad and I don't like that he's mad, so we're gonna fight over it until the last 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
That was kind of the whole gripe.
Yeah,
between the characters.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could boil it down to that if you wanted to.
That's what I'm calling it. I'm calling it basic. I'm calling it flat.
Yeah, I guess I just disagree with you because I think the characters evolve over the course of the film in a lot of different ways. They go from literally in the first 10 minutes, the only words they can exchange are altercation. It's the only thing they can talk about, or at least Hoyt. All Hoyt can talk about is how much he fucking hates him, right? And they have this whole tuna lion thing, right? To the point where Terry is leading him out of the police station held up by the gun.
Yeah.
By halfway through the movie, they have differences in their approach, but they're working together. And by the end, they're fully on board with each other. So, I guess I just don't agree with the idea of flat. Because flat would mean there was no progression through the whole film. And they get to the last 15 minutes and all of a sudden everything's worked out. If that's what would happen, I totally agree with you. But I just don't think that's what happened here.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
One thing I'll wholly admit with this film, and it was something I realized probably on the second, third rewatch, is the third act is definitely substantially slower than the first two acts in terms of pacing, jokes, and all that stuff. I think a lot of that is due to necessity. They don't really advance much in the plot like in the second act at all. They pretty much just go from like joke to joke to joke to joke, and like and they incorporate little things about the case in there to make it somewhat relevant. But for the most part, the first 2/3 of this movie are all jokes. So it's a roller coaster ride of just happiness and fun for those first 2/3, and then you get to the last third where they're like, all right, we actually have to land the plane and make the story make sense. So we actually have to kind of have some dialogue and not spend all of our time focusing on jokes. And I think for a lot of people, that kind of feels like a chore just to get through that last third. And I'll even admit, at this point, I start tuning out at that point.
And it just seems like a crutch from the writer's perspective. Like, they spend all this time on jokes and little story bits, and at the end they're like, oh yeah, we have to wrap this movie needs a conclusion. And then they kind of put it together.
So one thing I did want to bring up before I get to my own personal favorite scenes and lines and all that good stuff, I think that the actual crimes committed and the embezzlement and everything going on, I can imagine that being very hard to follow for someone who doesn't have any background or is just in it for the laughs or action. You know what I mean?
Like that.
Yeah, I totally can understand why it's definitely my biggest gripe with this movie. So I can imagine why that would be very difficult for someone to follow. Because they're basically talking about this guy, they don't give you any background on this Urshan guy or the Lendl Global company that this whole thing opens with, right? So he loses a bunch of their money. They can spend like 10 seconds showing that with characters you've never been introduced to before. It's not a great introduction. And then they never, through the whole thing, outside of like hard to hear phone call messages and stuff like that, really explain until the very end with Urshan what's happening. And even when he explains it, it's like a 2-line explanation. So one thing I would have liked is if they did explain it a little bit better, add a little bit more depth to the crime, add a little more explanation of why, they bring out the little lines of, oh, the Chechnyans, we tried to do a Dora the Explorer, didn't work out. Like, they did little one-off lines like that, but I think they could have done a much better job with his character and explaining the backstory of how the crime came to be. Take away maybe some of that other time with, Terry and his girlfriend or whatever, maybe some of the other scenes you don't like. Put it into building up this background of the actual crime itself and the criminals, so we're invested when we get to the shootout. So now we're invested in why they want to kill the guy, other than he owes them money. Now, so they got that gripe out of the way. Let's talk about the stuff that I love about this movie, which are the comedic scenes. We already talked about the opening scene where you had Samuel L. Jackson and The Rock and jumping off the building, hero plays. It's amazing. It's awesome. And then you go right into the funeral scene, which I love the funerals. The funeral scene where they're fighting and the whispering, I want to go, and they're like, and then Michael Keaton, the best part, Michael Keaton comes in, what the hell is going on here? He's like yelling at them while whispering. It's amazing. It's just, God, I just love Michael Keaton so much. So just having a fight at a funeral, I don't know, have you seen that in a movie before? I thought that was pretty original. They're on the ground rolling around fighting, and they're police officers.
The whole time.
Yeah, and they're whispering the whole time, like, kick his ass. Yeah, that's how we do it in the hood. Yeah, it's like stuff like that. It's so funny. I talked about Michael Keaton with the funeral scene, right? But that's just one of the main scenes. I think all of his scenes are great. The Bed Bath & Beyond, where he's reading the announcement, the bath mats are in.
Guys.
There's a rapist on watch. Oh wait, no, ignore that. That's my other job. Well, don't ignore it. Like, all of that is great, and then they show, oh, you here for the bath mats? Like, he's just the whole fact of his second life, and then all the lines about his son. So doing all this, so his son go to college, be bisexual, and become a DJ. The Prius autopsy. Tell me that must have been one of your favorites, because that is all random humor. It's so off the wall.
I feel like a lot of that was also
improv.
100%.
So I can tell you it is, because on the unedited version, there's a 3-minute long version of that scene where they just list stuff. They're just going, just reading stuff off the list. Because you see, he has a checklist. He's literally just going off of that. The fact they call it a soup kitchen, Dirty Mike and the boys. Thanks for the F Shack. Oh my God, that is so. And all the Prius jokes in this movie are great, because this is when the Prius first came out. So these were new Prius jokes. Like, now everyone's got a Prius joke. Priuses drive around with bumper stickers that say, "I love my Prius, haha." Like, even Prius owners make fun of their own cars. Like, back then, they were like the new big thing. Hell of a machine. Here's one I'm really interested to hear if you're into it. Did you like the gift exchange scene where they're in the car and Will Ferrell gives Hoitz the mug?
I thought it was random.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But kind of a little bit of the same concern. Like, what was?
Right.
What? I don't know. It's just.
Well, do you get the joke? It's
what?
Female body inspector.
Yeah.
And we're both in law enforcement?
Yeah, I get it. And you explained that. So it was funny. Yeah. It was funny. I love like the random humor that just doesn't matter at all to anything.
Yeah, it's so random.
It's just thrown in there. I think this is my
Well, that being said, the whole idea of a man randomly giving another man a gift is just a generally weird thing.
And what the gift is, and him explaining it too.
It's cringe humor. It's super cringy. That scene is an example of pure cringe humor. So if you're into that, you're gonna like it. But if not, I get why you're not into it. Maison.
Alex.
Time to give our Holdupability rankings.
Cool.
So, this is where we give a score 1 to 10 and how we think that this movie holds up now.
Awesome. So, I thought, it's an action comedy, and I thought the action was great and the comedy was great. So, while I had little gripes with the comedy, I thought overall a lot of the jokes were very random humor, and a lot of them I liked. So, good job for that. And I think the action scenes were fun to watch, and I think they were well done compared to other action movies where it really comes second.
Yeah.
I think that the overall story wasn't really my taste and wasn't really, I wasn't really invested in these two characters, but I love their chemistry together just comedically.
Right.
Overall, I'm gonna give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. Kind of like it's a good movie rating.
Yeah.
But nothing really special.
Gotcha. Interesting. So I think most people have the same feeling you do. I mean, this is not one of Will Ferrell's most popular movies by any means, and I don't blame you for it. I think all of your gripes are completely fair. So one of the things I'll toss out there, I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I don't think all of the references land for someone in your age range, which is completely fine. It's just gonna hurt how this movie's gonna hold up as time goes on, right? Like, less and less people are gonna know what the Little River Band is, right? So less and less. I think that's a very respectable score, Mason. I give you a lot of props. Glad that you enjoyed the movie. For me, I'm gonna give it a little bit of better grade. I think it just kind of reaches my age range and demographic a little bit more, especially because I have that history with watching those older action comedy, cop dramas, that type of stuff.
And with a bunch of actors that you grew up with.
Exactly. And also, that's a huge thing that I didn't even hit. I'm just gonna hit it really fast. There's so many little bit performers that are stars now, or like are feature actors that you see all over the place in TV and movies. The guy with the beard, shaved. Like, that guy. There's a few guys, like a few different characters in this movie that are like that. It's very great. So very great cast. And then the comedic performance of Will Ferrell, he's probably my favorite comedic actor in movies. I would probably have to say is the best hit rate for me. I think Mark Wahlberg, this is one of his best comedic performances. He plays a straight man for a good portion, but I think he has some moments where he shines comedically. And then, the writing is not great. It's not a very deep story. It's not very complex, but in these types of movies, I really don't expect that much. So the bar isn't very high. I think they could have done a better job explaining kind of like the villain and the crime background. They could have delved more into that. But at the same time, I enjoy that this movie is less than 2 hours. I think it's right around 1:45. You really don't want it to go for much more. So overall, I'm going to give this movie an 8.8 out of 10. Some people might think that's generous, but it's tough shit. It's my birthday, my channel. I'm giving it an 8.8. So I would say check it out. If you sound like you're into the same type of movie interest and background that I have, you'll probably love this movie. If you don't really have as much connection or kind of sound like you're more in Mason's boat, you'll probably still enjoy it. It'll be a good background flick for you, or something you can just throw in on a Friday, Saturday night. But yeah, don't like plan your weekend around it or anything. Thanks for checking out this video.
Like and subscribe, and let us know what you thought about the movie in the comments below.
Let us know if there's any movies you want us to watch. Who knows, maybe we'll watch them together.